She's over Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wednesday edition of our Paranormal Portal here on YouTube exclusively. So, all I can say is I'm just thrilled to be back. It's always hard not to do the show, and while last week was important, and it was important on many levels, why I couldn't be here doing the show, I desperately missed it, and I'm just so thrilled to be back here with you guys now. But I hope you guys did good in my absence, in our absence. Don and I weren't obviously on the air, but I hope you guys took the opportunity to come back and check out the archives here on YouTube and see what we've done, if there's episodes you'd missed, etc., etc. I know the numbers have been climbing steadily, so thank you guys. But before I go any further, please let me welcome my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard.
Hey, where's my hey?
There.
Hey, there it is. Wow.
Yeah, you're fuzzy as hell.
Wow.
How's that? Is that in the back of the mic? Is it like all jammed in there?
No, it's,
Wow, it sounds like you remember those walkie-talkies you got when you were like in 5th grade?
yes.
They work for like 10 feet away. You could hear each other better through your ears.
Nope.
Nothing. I'm gonna mute you. Want to just? All right, Don's gonna have to doctor his mic. I'm not sure what's going on, but again, it's another mic. It's another cord. It's another channel. I don't know what the hell's going on, but this is the Portal, ladies and gentlemen. So we always have all kinds of interesting, unanticipated events that keep us young at heart. So you back, ready to try, Don?
Yeah, try.
There you are.
Hey, as I was trying to say, hey, I have missed all of you guys. I've missed my buddy Brent, and nice to see everybody here. Oh, there's Lucky. Hi, Dory, Pixie, MCat, Lewis. Gosh, Lady Death, missed you all. All of you, haunted places, everyone.
Thanks, guys, for being here, and thanks for the nice, warm reception, and thank you for those of you that sent messages during the absence. I've also been getting some emails from listeners. We got a couple of them in now for submissions for another show, I hope, that I want to put together for listener submissions. When you guys have paranormal events of your own, please feel free to email them to paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. and I will be happy to read your stories on the air as well. So we've got those coming in, and I'm really excited about it. I just got one that's a EVP in just a second ago from MCAT, but I just noticed it was there a second ago, so I haven't had a chance to review it.
Tear into that.
But we're going to...
Fierce.
Yeah.
Something fierce.
Well, I love those especially because not only is it an encounter story, but it's, there's proof. There's some kind of captured evidence, which I'm really excited to dig into and look at. So we'll definitely be looking into that. MCAT, thank you so much for that submission. And thank you, Sarah, for your submission. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a paranormal event of your own that you'd like to share with us and let us know about, again, it's paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. But we're back. We are here.
And we're live.
And as always, we are unrehearsed and unscripted. So
wow,
we don't always know what the hell's going to come out of our mouths, but it's sure to be entertaining regardless.
That's true.
But I had a great time visiting family and seeing some old friends. I bumped into one old friend that I haven't seen since junior high. And through elementary school and junior high, we were really pretty inseparable. We were always hanging out, always together, and either I was at his house or he was at our house, and it was a lot of fun. So during high school, we kind of lost contact. Just lives go different directions and whatever. So it was really neat to reconnect with that guy. His name is Tucker, and it was a real thrill to catch up with him again. So looking forward to rekindling that old friendship and staying in contact and seeing what's going on. But it was funny because we hadn't talked for years, But talking again was just like we hadn't missed a beat. It was just jumping right back into it.
Oh, there goes my mic.
There you go again, Don.
There goes my mic.
God bless
Oh,
it.
I love this. What is going on today?
I don't know. Well, when I came back, I fired up the studio again, and I had all kinds of interesting things happening. So I was being scolded.
How dare you?
Where have you been? We've been waiting for you.
Okay, give it a try.
Let's see if you're
Let's
working.
hey, I don't know what's going on. The plug's okay,
Yeah.
but if I mess with it, I bet it's just gonna totally tear things up. So anyhow,
Yeah, just don't touch it.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
just talk.
Don't
into
touch
it.
this thing in your face. Don't touch it. Just don't touch it.
Just talk into that big black
Rub the
puffball in
microphone.
front of your
No,
mouth.
Pixie, no. We're just gonna delete that one.
So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and we're going to do a show for you now. And just to let you know, coming up Friday night is Robin Moonshadow will be joining us here in the portal, so it'll be fantastic to have her back. She was on the show before discussing proto-pygmies and little people and stuff. It was a really cool show, but I'm really excited to see what she's going to bring to the table this time. So definitely tune in this Friday night at 10 p.m. Pacific time here on YouTube and on tfrlive.com, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, etc., etc. So we got a show for you tonight, and I just called it Encounters in the Darkness because, and it's something that we've discussed briefly before on the show. What is it about darkness? Because I know that paranormal things happen all the time. They happen when they happen. There's no clock. There's no scheduled events. There's just occurrences. There's just phenomena that just sometimes pops into our reality and then seems to pop out of our reality. But when you have if you had two similar events, let's say you're sitting in your dining room table, broad daylight, and a cup would move, it'd be like, wow, that's really weird. A cup moved. Hey, guess what, guys? A cup moved. But if you're sitting in that same section, in that same setting, rather, at night, and a cup moved, it's like, what is it about the darkness that intensifies all of that? And so we're going to discuss a little bit of this, and we're going to discuss a bunch of encounters as well, and we'll see what you guys think. But now, getting into that a little bit, Don, what is it you think is going on with darkness? What is it that makes it so much more intense?
Well, I think it has to do with, well, it goes back to, when we were still cavemen, we hid in caves in the dark and, because we didn't know what was out there. And I think it's just something we're totally ingrained with since time immemorial that, darkness is scary. There, you can't see, you can't perceive what's around you in the best of your abilities. And I think it's just ingrained in us to stay in the light, stay away from the darkness. But then again, you've got also the spiritual aspects of it and things like that, and all the things that we grew up with, when we were kids, whether you went to Sunday school or not, and everybody's talking about the darkness that surrounds us. But that's meaning on in a divine sense,
Sure.
God versus Satan kind of way. But, spiritually too, because you can be in a dark place, in the time of your life, and those they just magnify, I think, that trepidation of being in the dark or not knowing what's coming up or whatever that may be. I just think it's just ingrained in us. It's just
Right.
something that's been here.
And I would agree with that. That when we were on the menu as well as everything else, that there's things that are so much more adept at night than we are. Of course, animals thrive during the night. They don't need the level of light that we need, and their hearing surpasses ours to such a vast degree. Their vision surpasses ours to such a vast degree, and whereas they're at home in the night, they can function and navigate it without problem. We do need the torches. We do need, and I don't know if that was true for our ancient ancestors or not, but I know it's certainly true for what we understand as modern man, the modern version of ourselves, that we have a tendency to manicure everything around us and reshape reality to our comfort. And once we're jarred out of that, let's say, for instance, a power failure. Well, we run and get the candles and we try to bring back the light somehow because we can't stand to sit in the dark. That's just, it's a frightening thing for people. And so when things like that happen, we already feel there's a state of vulnerability. And now many of you have listened to the show know, and it's certainly a belief of mine, and many of you have shared this belief and have echoed this sentiment as well. But we seem to have an agreement that some spiritual presences thrive on fear. And you're going to elicit more fear, because fear essentially is a surrender. Whenever you fear something, you are surrendering your power to this other thing, whatever it may be. I mean, and that could be could be a grizzly bear, or it could be a snake, it could be a spider, or it could be a ghost or some other presence, evil presence that you can sense around you. As soon as you generate that fear, you are admitting a weakness. You are surrendering your power over it, and that's more in a spiritual sense than a real sense. Now, any rational adult can go, well, spiders freak me out. I'm kind of afraid of them, so I'm going to step on it. I can get rid of that, or there's a bear there. I'm going to shut the door and get the gun, and you don't want to have to come to that. But with things like the spiritual sense, you can't attack, a ghost. I mean, in a traditional sense, you can't throw a stick at it. You can't, fend it off with a chair. You can't guard yourselves in the physical plane from what is a spiritual threat.
Right.
And certainly the night would magnify that surrender. It would magnify that feeling of powerlessness. And I'm not sure, obviously ghosts don't have eyeballs, so I'm not sure how they perceive the reality around us. Perhaps they just perceive the energy of everything around us. And so there really isn't a light versus a dark. Maybe there's a different energy to the nighttime because of the moon versus the sun that may create a different energy field that they can perceive and act on. But I'm not sure how it works in that way, but we certainly do have eyeballs, and we are, they are incredible, benefits, but they're also incredible hindrances. So I think you're right. I think it is the fact that darkness is intimidating to us, because once the light is not there, then we are in this primal state of not being able to perceive. It suddenly just becomes unknown. Everything around becomes unknown.
Right.
So,
as soon as you said, when we were on the menu, I instantly thought of that movie, I Am Legend.
I Am Legend.
Yeah, it was a Will Smith movie.
Yeah.
Every time the sun went down, the creepers came out.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like,
Right. Exactly. And granted, if there was things that had that physical prowess,
yeah.
Everybody would be afraid, because you'd be stupid not to be. And fear can be self-preserving as well. I mean, it's not always a bad thing, but it's when fear is crippling is when you've surrendered. When there's a healthy fear too. I don't mean to state that I'm not afraid of anything. Of course I am. I have fears, but I try not to allow myself to succumb to the crippling fear. When I've been presented with paranormal things, and I don't honestly recall. I think the only time that I can recall being frightened, feeling vulnerable, was when I was in the shower and the hot water cranked up, and I was all alone in a locked house. That, to me, I just felt so vulnerable. And I'm not sure what a layer of polyester cotton blend provides, but
naked and afraid.
Yeah, that was me. That was totally me. I was just like, no, I don't want to be here anymore. This is really not a happy place. So I needed a safe space, Don. I really did. So
I understand. That's why I like my shop out back.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's where I hide all my good stuff.
Ooh, now I'm a little concerned. But we're going to get into some of these stories tonight, ladies and gentlemen. You be the judge, I guess. I don't pretend to have the answers. I don't pretend to, be able to speak authoritatively about any of this. But the Paranormal Portal is about sharing ideas. It's about sharing thoughts and opinion. And maybe we can all learn from it. Maybe you guys will just think I'm just wacky, but
well, if they don't think that already, we've missed the mark. I mean, for both of us, actually.
We've given them plenty to think that about, but it's just, ghost stories are phenomenal to me, and
bread and butter.
What?
They're bread and butter.
They're bread and butter. Well, they are. And we were talking about it before the show. It's like, of all of the phenomena that people experience, I would say that the most universal is ghost experiences, because there's no specific setting for a ghost experience.
Right.
You can be in the depths of a city, or you can be out in the lonely wilderness, or you can be anywhere in between and experience something of a paranormal ghostly experience. Now, for things like Bigfoot, Dogman, etc., you usually, normally, not exclusively, but 99% of the time, people that experience these things are in the wilderness somewhere, And to experience the Loch Ness monster, you've got to be at Loch Ness,
Yeah.
So, but it's something about ghosts that just are everywhere. So what they are, I guess since they in many cases were used to be living people, not exclusively though. There's plenty of entities that were never human that are out there. But wherever people have been, there could be ghosts. So it's a fun topic to cover because I think it's the one that, ghost stories are about as old as our civilizations.
That's true, yeah.
Those are the stories of legend and the stories of, of yesterday and today. So let's get into a couple of these, ladies and gentlemen, and you guys can hopefully enjoy these. I've always lived in Oklahoma. We have lived in the same house for 20 years. My dad had previously had the house built during his first marriage and then later moved back a year after I was born. My dad and his family have always lived in this area. My grandparents used to live in the same house where my uncle is now. Another uncle used to live behind our house also, another to the left of our house, and there was an old 2-story house that sat next to my grandparents' old house. They lived in it at one point. We came from a large family of Choctaw Indians. My grandparents had 8 children, my dad being the eldest. My dad and his brothers have always told us kids about this ghost bear that had been seen in the area and in the nearest town. One of my uncles once saw it face to face. He was making him a snack. He was making him a snack in the kitchen when he looked up and the face of this bear was pressed to the window, looking right at him. My dad always told me that this bear was white and that it could stand and walk on 2 legs. One night, all of them were outside and they saw it standing up in the back of my grandfather's work truck. I only know of 2 other times where this thing has been noticed. One being just down the road from me and another in the town where I live and where I went to school, rather. The one that happened down the road from me was the little girl who was playing hide-and-go-seek with her brothers. She went around a barn and ran right into this creature.
Ooh.
The one in the next town happened in the late 90s, early 2000s, and there was a house that stood in town where people claimed a light came on in the living room every night, when the house had not had any electricity for years. A couple of teens went into this house, and this thing had chased one boy all the way down the large hill that this house sat on. These were the last known sightings of the thing. My second story happened to me personally in the same house that was mentioned above. The room that I was in at the time was previously the garage. I had been sleeping in this room for a couple of years before I started to see things. I shared a room with one of my sisters. We both had the same encounter the first time. We both saw this black mist come from the attic entrance and form into a black shadow figure. This figure stands about 6 feet tall. We kept seeing this shadow man every night. One night my sister had fallen asleep before me and I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden I feel my feet slowly rise up and slam onto the bed. I tried to roll over and I couldn't. And when I was trying to move, I felt a hand on the middle of my back and whispered my name. After that, my parents switched rooms with us, and we didn't see anything for the next few years. When I became pregnant at 17 is when it all started again. I was about 3 or 4 months pregnant. I was asleep in bed, and I was awakened by something I couldn't move. And the only thing that I was able to move was my eyes. I'm not 100% sure, but if this was the Shadow Man or if it was some Native American tribes believed to be an out-of-body experience. The third happened only a few months ago. I was sitting in the living room watching TV when I looked down the hall, and I saw a woman dressed in early 1800s style of clothing. I watched this lady walk into the hallway and back into the hall towards where my room is now. I told my mom and aunt about this and described what the woman looked like, and they showed me a picture of a couple of days later of my great-great-grandmother, and it was then that I realized that is who I saw. I still see the Shadow Man walking around my house from time to time, And in the past couple of days, I have been noticing what looks like white lace walking out on our front porch. I don't know if it is because I am Native American that I can see these things, or if it is because they trust me for them to show themselves to me.
Huh.
Very cool. Very cool. And there's certainly something to be said for heritage and lineage. Of course, most of the First Nations people embrace a very spiritual side of themselves, and that has been, I think, retained. It's never really been pushed away. Some of that had to be pushed down because of the forced assimilation that many First Nations people were subjected to assimilate with, the the white people, I guess. But I still think that they still continued to observe their spirituality and their beliefs, and I think they still survive to this day in many cases. But I don't know if by virtue of being native, if you would be more able to view the spirit or not. But I'm sure that having that deep, grounded spiritual heritage is definitely a plus
Yeah, definitely.
in terms of perceiving the paranormal.
And plus, like you said, they also kept the memories of their ancestors alive through
Hmm.
ceremony and just their belief system. So it's not surprising to me that somebody would have a possible vision of their great great grandmother. You know, uh, you know, um, uh, it, it it makes sense to me, especially when you're talking about First Nations people and their
Hmm.
beliefs. So
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
spiritual sides.
And our good friend Nase, of course, has been on many times, and he's Anishinaabe out of Minnesota, and he's definitely brought a lot of his spirituality
Yeah,
and understandings to the show,
sure has.
and I'm just honored to have such connections and resources, because I think that those viewpoints are incredibly powerful and valid, especially now when things are so confusing in the world. It's just getting back to that grounded center, I think, is really crucial. So I think that's important.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
So take it away, Don.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let me get over here. So it says, it all started after moving into my new house. Yeah, it's pretty cliche, but believe me, I know, but it's what happened. I never experienced anything supernatural before, and though interested, I never really expected anything to happen to me. I was able to rent the house pretty cheaply. I didn't think anything of it because it was old and not in the best neighborhood, so I guess it was just I got a good deal. After moving everything in, things were fine for a while. I don't remember exactly when it started because it seemed so minor at the time. I'd leave a light on in the kitchen or in the bathroom and come back to find it off. Honestly, I thought it was just that I was just forgetting that I had turned them off already when I came back. After a while, I began to wonder and started leaving a couple lights on purpose. Sometimes nothing would happen. Sometimes I'd come back and find the lights turned off. By now I figured that something was off. I wasn't really scared, but just confused. I thought maybe something was wrong with the electronics. It says electronics. Okay. I started leaving lights on a bit more often, freaking killing my power bill because I thought I might be able to get some sign of why they were randomly shutting off. That's when it started to take another turn. The first time I remember something crazy happening was when I left the kitchen and the living room lights on while I was asleep. I woke up to a deep, rumbling growl coming from the kitchen. Now from the bathroom. I could see down the hall to the living room, and that room is connected to the kitchen. I remember waking up and thinking that there was an animal or something in my house. I looked down the hall towards the living room to see the light darker. See the light darker. Okay.
Mm.
Somebody had flicked off the light from the kitchen. Another low growl came, this time from the living room. I nearly screamed as I saw something bolt across the length of the hall, opening, and then into the living room. Then the living room light went out. I couldn't tell exactly what it was though. It just seemed like a black shadow or something. It didn't really matter. I was scared crapless. I bolted from the bed, then and threw on the bedroom light, expecting something to be in the room and getting ready to come after me. Nothing. There wasn't anything in the room. I let out a low breath, and then I started to move down the hall to the living room. Once I got to the end, I practically bolted to throw on the light switch there. Again, nothing. Kitchen next, and once again, nothing. I started to think I dreamt it all before I went to turn off the light in the kitchen and stopped. It says now I was a grown man. It says now I was a grown man, but here I was terrified to turn off that light switch. And I'll admit it, I slept with all the lights on that night. That was a mistake. When I woke up the next morning, all the lights were off once again, and I went to push myself out of bed and winced as my body felt sore. I pulled the sheets off to see long red marks drawn along my legs and arms.
Ew.
It looked like something had scratched me in the night. That terrified the hell out of me, but not nearly so much as when I saw what happened. Every light I left on was smashed. Every light bulb that was on last night was broken. Every lamp knocked over and smashed in. My breath caught in my throat as I looked around. Something was screwed up here as hell. Screwed up as hell here. And something tried to, do something to me.
Ooh.
I called in for work that day and went immediately and replaced all the lights. I didn't know what to do then. I thought about leaving, and I know this probably sounds stupid, but this was my home. It was my first time away from my family, and this was my home. I couldn't give it up, so I stayed, even as it got worse. Even though I was beginning to become terrified of the dark, I really couldn't sleep with the light on at me in the bedroom. I'd leave other lights on, though, like in the hall or the living room, giving myself enough to see pretty well in my darker rooms. And almost every night I'd wake up in the middle of the night to hear something growling and prowling around the living room, and then the lights would shut off. I didn't want to go look. I was terrified at the thought of being in the same room with whatever was in there. So I curled up in bed and prayed that it never came in. One night after this went on for a while, I had it. I bought a gun and turned on every light in the house. Then I sat in the middle of the living room with my gun in my lap and a baseball bat sitting next to me. All right.
Fantastic.
I waited. There was nothing first for a long time. Around 2 in the morning, I began to hear it. Oddly, it was behind me. I turned and peeked toward the hall to my bedroom and could hear that familiar growl. I swallowed and held my gun in one hand and the bat in the other. Oh boy. And slowly began to step around to get a better view of the bedroom from the living room. As I began to get a view of my bed, I heard a loud thump, followed by an inhuman roar. I, being the brave man I was, jumped back and away from the hallway. I wanted to end this all, but dear God, I didn't want to deal with that thing. I could hear tearing and smashing, and I don't know how I caught it, but I did manage to hear an audible click, then nothing. Slowly I went back to peek down the hall, and the light was off once again. A deep breath, and I ventured forth, my weapons ready. When I came to the bedroom and flicked the light back on, I gasped. My bed was ravaged, torn completely apart. It was like some animal had jumped into it just ripped it to shreds.
Jeez.
I stepped forward to look at what was left of my bed and just stood in shock for who knows when. It wasn't until I heard the sound of a familiar growl that I turned around. Standing near my door, right at the light switch, was when I finally saw it. It was a man, a white and rotting man with a mangled body that looked like he had once been a dog's chew toy staring at me.
What the hell?
I was too in shock to even raise my weapon, and it stared at me just for a moment and then flicked the light off. I screamed. I'm not even ashamed to admit it. I screamed and bolted. I didn't care if that was where that man had been standing. I ran right past where I had seen him, swinging my bat like a madman. I nearly put a hole in the hallway as I ran through into the safe light in the hall. I turned to look back then, just in time to see him once again near the hall's light switch. He turned that one off too. By then, I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to be safe. I burst past the living room and into the brightness of my kitchen. I heard the sound of the growling and the scratching nearly all around me then, and I knew he was coming back. I looked back once again to see the mangled and rotten corpse of a man turn off another light with a broken finger and plunge me into terrifying darkness. I broke for the living room.
Hmm.
This was going to be my final stand. I had to fight here. I drew close to the standing lamp that was my last line of defense. I hated the dark, so I stayed right there, next to the comforting standing lamp. I waited for it to turn off, but it never did. I looked around and quiet. Nothing but quiet. I turned then to look at that saving grace of a lamp that refused to yield. I started to find myself laughing, a crazy but alive laugh, and I thought I'd finally be okay.
Wow.
Stepping closer, I swear I almost hugged that lamp until I saw it. Wow. I heard the growl first coming from behind me, then in front. From that lamp, my eyes widened and I stared as the light from the lamp intensified. I stumbled back and I don't know what happened next, but I think I tripped on something. I just know I found myself flat on my back staring up at the bright, intense light. It wasn't comforting any longer, just hot and heavy and bright. I thought it was going to burn me away, and then it came. I don't have the words to describe what poured from that lamp's light. It was hideous, twisted, and filled with rage. I know I'll never forget those eyes, though, bright, hot, and white, two glowing circles of pure malice. It hated me. It hated everything about me. And not just me, it hated all of us, every human being. But it was stuck here, and it would lash out at what it could. Me. I don't know how I knew this, but I just knew. I lunged, yeah, I think it should say, it lunged for me, and I prepared myself for a painful death. Click, the light went off. Once again, darkness, sweet, quiet, relaxing darkness. I stayed on the ground for a long moment, letting my eyes adjust and kept my gaze fixated where the standing lamp was. As the seconds passed, I could start to make him out. That mangled man standing by the lamp, one torn hand upon the switch as he looked down on me. I understood what it all meant. Everything that happened, the man pulled his hand away from it and then pointed at the mangled finger towards it before, very clearly, shaking its head from side to side. All I could find myself doing was nodding. He wasn't the one trying to harm me all this time. It was all those instances. He was trying to protect me. The creature could only come in the light.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this mangled man had been trying to keep me safe. He didn't want someone else to repeat his mistakes. I moved out the very next day and never looked back. Whatever it was confined to that house, and so far, nothing has come at me from another light source. However, that thing will always stick with me in my mind. Every night in my new apartment, I made a habit of wandering around the house, making sure every light was off, every curtain was closed, and made sure to plunge myself in quiet, comforting, and safe pitch darkness.
That is bizarre. I don't know what to think of that.
Yeah, that's one of
It's
those ones that I think borders on good story, bro.
yeah, that's some pretty creative writing. I think it's just I've never heard anything to corroborate that, and I can't believe that he would be the only person ever in the history of a phenomena to experience it. You know, that others would have experienced it. Somebody else would have come forward and talked about
Oh, that
the
would have been
light beings.
unbelievable.
Yeah. And such an aggressive thing as to, physically harm,
Hmm.
allegedly the old man before and then him now.
Right.
I don't know. It's
Yeah, it's one of those, it started off pretty good, but then it just kind of became, wow.
now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll never say that something is for sure true or for sure not true. We just don't know, and we don't pretend to know. But there's just this point where you have to have critical thinking and just be like, there's so many creative people out there creating, I mean, you pick up any really good novel and you'll be sucked into a story that absolutely feels
unbelievable.
real. It'll pull you into it like a movie, and you'll be along for the ride. And they're phenomenal.
Right.
But those same caliber of people are also out there, fabricating hoaxes just because they enjoy it. It
Right.
gives them a kick, and
Right.
and so I don't know. I that one what I would say, yeah,
Yeah, it's one
good
of those.
story, like you
Yeah.
said, good story, but there's no other.
There's no corroborating.
Nothing. There's no other corroborating
Right.
phenomenon that I've ever heard of that would at least even sound akin to that.
Hmm.
Yeah, very strange though, but
Good story, bro.
good story, bro. Moving along, nothing to see here.
Nothing to see on that one.
Yeah, exactly. So cool story though. But thanks for reading it. It was obviously a mouthful.
It was, yeah, and there was like, wait a minute, that's spelled wrong. Wait, I'm not here to, to
Yeah,
correct his
I know
grammar.
that's the hard part, ladies and gentlemen. That's the other hard part about these stories is most of them are not proofread to any level, so you're
No.
reading whatever language this person is capable of writing, and sometimes
Whatever language that may be.
yeah, I'm not even sure it's English in a lot of cases, but it sounds kind of like it. But it's to try to narrate that and read that at any kind of smooth pace is tough because you got to decipher it as you're reading it.
Yeah.
So let me offer you another one, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Grandma Stories.
Mm.
All right, this is a story narrated by my grandma long back. It made a huge impact on me that I remember it even after 15 years. And this happened to my grandma's father. Generally, there was a rumor in her days a baby born with legs out instead of head. With
Breach.
legs. Oh, yeah, it's breech. Okay. Has the ability to see unnatural things throughout their life, like ghosts and all. Such people wear slippers off opposite leg, left to right and right to left, just to keep ghosts away. It was a rumor as told by my grandma. So my grandma's father used to work in a field during late nights and used to return home by 10 p.m. approximately. So this particular day, he finished his work and took and placed a bunch of dry grass on head and started home. And I'm gonna. Oh, this is from India, by the way. So that's why it sounds so unusual. But the route was like this: the fields were outside their village, and to enter the village, they need to cross a small path of graveyard alongside a river, and then a temple, and the village starts. So he reached this path alongside the river, and suddenly the weight of the grass increased, as if someone sat on it. He also felt that someone sat on it. He suddenly changed his slippers from right to left. With stumbling voice, asked, "Who is it?" He heard a female voice. He felt afraid and asked what she wants, and why she sat on the grass. She said that if he throws grass away, she will kill him. Also, she asked him to marry her as she was alone from a long time. She she told him she will give all the stuff he needs for a better life. By the time he reached the temple, he threw the grass aside and entered the temple. He saw a middle-aged woman who was very angry at him and started shouting. She demanded him to marry her or else she will kill him. He stayed in the temple until morning. He told the story to his family, and they did some puja later. I don't know necessarily what that is, and it got disappeared later, is what it says. It got disappeared, so that's good. Sorry for the grammatical errors. I used to imagine this in my childhood, so I remember it until now. I didn't thought about the genuineness, though. That's very cute. I love stories even from all over the world, although sometimes the cultural references are hard to understand. I don't pretend to be a worldly person, so but I know, of course, India is quite a spiritual place, and with lots of lore, lots of legend, lots of deities, and with Hinduism and Jainism and all the many religions over there that are observed,
Right.
Islam rather. There's a lot of things going on over there, real melting pots of a lot of, and then if there, of course, there's probably tribal references, as well. So another one hard to understand for us Westerners, but I think it's still entertaining. Let's see. I don't want to marry, or I don't want to marry. I don't want to read any more of these. So let's see. Her grandma coming to visit. Let's read that one. All right, this is a United States story, so this will be good. My girl's grandma died early last year. They were very close. My girl is the type that gets anxiety and talks a lot of BS to keep her from going nuts. A couple of times when we went out, she thought her grandma was watching over her when she got her job and she was going to come haunt me if I treated her wrong. Just foolish drunk talk, right? However, something recently happened in the house that I cannot explain. Her grandma never visited the apartment we share in life and never actually came to New York City, but I think her presence may have been felt. One night last week, I was super stressed out. My mind was in a million different places from a stressful week, and my brain in general had been in a mess the last month for reasons I'd rather keep private. My girl and I had just concluded a particularly heated argument about whether we should continue to be together. Eventually, she calmed down and went to bed, and as I stayed up watching shows on the computer, blood still boiling on the inside, the house was completely dark except for my computer screen. As I glanced over at my girl laying down on the bed for a brief second, I thought I saw a mental outline of a person standing over her. I have had previous experiences where I saw white things I thought could have been faces or maybe something written on the mirror when I shower, but nothing to the same effect as this. It may have all been imagined, but for some reason her grandma came to mind. I asked a random question about her grandmother out loud to see if the sensation came back, but it did not. The question from all of this: do spirits or souls come by to look over the family members during times of stress and anxiety, even in places they have never visited in life? I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our understanding of space and time is simply our interpretation on a very physical plane. But the spirits, there is no real space. I mean, this is all basically an illusion, I think, on the spiritual realm, and that there really isn't a distance because I'm pretty sure that in the spiritual realm, a thought will bring you across the cosmos. You could be at the bottom of the Laurentian abyss with a thought. You could be on the surface of the sun with a thought. I mean, it's all manifestations in a physical reality based off of a spiritual, I don't know, eternity, I guess. I don't know, that essentially everything is manifestive energy. We know that. And so I think that these beings that exist energetically, like spirits as we understand them, wouldn't have the barriers of physicality and distance and such that we experience living in our three dimensions and moving through space with these physical bodies. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that, Don, or does that sound plausible at least?
Well, it makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, because when when the final question was asked, well, what about spiritual attachments? Maybe the force of the grandma, or the life force, or whatever that is, of the grandma was attached to the girlfriend, and so when she had these times of stress and trouble, there was that comforting spiritual awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you just talked about how energy manifests energy. So if whatever the girlfriend was feeling, or could have predicated the manifestation itself.
Right.
So I mean, it's all what we manifest into being. Like you said, energy, creates energy. That's the way I figure. So maybe it's not just that, well, just because she hasn't been to this apartment. Well, she may not have, but the girlfriend was.
Right, and of course the connection to the family member, that love bond, it transverses anything. So that person that has passed simply has to think about being by that person they love, and they'll be there. I mean, there's the same thing could be said for remote viewing. I mean,
Right.
the whole premise of remote viewing is these people have never been these places, but they're in many cases very accurately describing details and things they couldn't possibly know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they can do that in remote viewing, which is an energetic practice of mind visualization by projecting spirit, then the fact that a spirit could be anywhere, to me, is an absolute. They could be wherever they choose to be. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So,
So just a side note there. Glenn from North Nottingham Paranormal Investigators.
mhm.
He says Puja, he believes, is a game of 8 ball.
Oh, well, sit in the temple and have some puja.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to play a game? Play for stakes.
Rack 'em up.
And then of
I got some
course,
time. There's a
yeah,
there's a
exactly.
weird chick outside.
I got to kill some time, dude. Keep her outside. But Pixie, of course, misread that and said magic 8 ball.
Oh yeah, that's right. Should
Well,
I go?
maybe
Should
she
I go
didn't
home
misread
now?
it.
Ask later. Damn.
Doesn't look likely. Oh, that was can I get home now?
Should I marry her? No. Oh, magic 8 ball. I'd love to get one of those for the studio. That's another thing I gotta find. The magic 8 ball. Cool.
Oh, goodness.
I kind of forgot about those. Those are awesome. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, looking at the camera behind. Well, you can't really see, but there's. If you look at Don's camera over to my right, but it appears to be to my left, as the camera laid out on the screen. But yeah, on that shelf behind him is all many things, and on the wall is several things as well. Some of them are sent by friends and stuff, but I think a magic 8 ball.
Like your Texas Bigfoot hunting license?
Yeah, I got a Texas Bigfoot hunting
there?
license. Yep, that's up there. And yeah, the zombies eat flesh was sent, and that Bigfoot crossing sign.
Mm-hmm. Where's the dress your Bigfoot thing at? Oh, it's
did
just
it
behind.
fall?
Yeah, it must have because it's behind that little sunburst.
Can you see it back there?
I can
Okay.
see it, but
All right, yeah,
I
it must
can
have
see it.
fallen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot happened while I was gone, apparently. So I know I had a cat that was plenty happy to have me come home.
Oh, you know what? We don't have the dragons on.
Ooh, but I haven't replaced those batteries
Well, that's
either.
okay. It should be fine. I bet you it's got enough juice.
It's got enough
It's full
juice.
of juice. Yep, it's on.
All right. Well, at least for now.
Yeah, well, we need all the help we can get.
We do. This is the portal, after all, ladies and gentlemen, where anything and everything can happen. When I first fired up my computer, Don, I was just logged in, and all of a sudden the monitor started doing that crap.
Oh,
It's like,
jeez.
bloop, 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 bloop. I'm like,
Where have you
God.
been?
Yeah, I
punishing
know.
you now.
And it went on for like 5 minutes. I'm like,
Right.
oh God. I'm just trying to check messages. I'm like, oh man, I'm sitting here. Bloop, 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 bloop. It was crazy.
That's funny.
It is funny, but it's just one of those things. It adds a spice to life.
Yeah,
I think.
that's one way to say it.
Yeah. It does that indeed. So I got another one here I want to read for you guys.
Ooh.
This one's a little shorter, not too long. This is called The Abandoned Office Building Ghosts. Something about abandon anything just seems to be like hot spots for paranormal activity.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah. We work in a garment district of Midtown Manhattan where many generations of office workers have come and gone, and accidents have happened over the years. Directly across from my boss's office is an abandoned floor space which has not had tenants since we moved in here 5 years ago. Every once in a while, I'm in meetings with him, and I notice workers shuffling across empty office space. Some in clothes that look dated, and they are flesh and blood, nothing ethereal or otherworldly about them. Move and take up space, and same as colleagues on the floors above and below them. I've always assumed they were contractors or construction workers looking to remodel the space, and I was usually too busy with what my boss was saying to think about anything about it. The other day when I was in my morning meeting, I noticed that one of them, a young gentleman seemingly in his 20s or 30s, had an appearance that looked off. As I looked directly at him, staring out the window, I thought for a split second I could see through him. Then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I've been seeing ghosts every day for the last 5 years. Since the building is pre-war and likely industrial, if I'm a ghost, that's likely to be a place I want to hang out in. Is it possible that ghosts can be shuffling around an office working like they did in life and appear like that all day, every day? Could this have been an industrial accident or disaster that is somehow leading them to keep haunting the space? What could I be seeing, and is it possibly paranormal? This has been weighing on my mind all weekend, and it's kind of nice they're ending these accounts with questions, but I would say absolutely. But I think this person is probably a latent medium, that they're able to see these things pretty clearly.
Well,
They have latent ability.
it does say Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
and it was submitted just March of this year.
Yeah.
So let's see what happened in Midtown Manhattan in 2001.
Right.
Who knows?
Who knows? I don't know. It's possible, but it's
MCAT says, I hope the afterlife isn't working in an office. I hope
Beetlejuice,
the
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
I hope the afterlife isn't working in the office.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, could you imagine? Like you're the guy that has to staple stuff for eternity. I'll tell you what, though, my cousin and I were talking about this last weekend, and we were talking about, what is it all about? Because of course, the whole idea for me going home was for my father's memorial, which is a wonderful event and was really well attended. And like I said, I re-met so many people that I'd known for ages ago, and it was just really fun to reconnect with them. But whether it's family or friends or both, but he he and I were talking about it, and it's like, eternity doesn't sound that bad unless you watch the Dead Files. The Dead Files, I don't know what the hell Amy Allen sees, but my God, there's like people stuck in walls and dripping from ceilings,
Oh, jeez.
and they're just all kinds of states of anguish.
Oh, wow.
It's like, what the hell is going on? Because she's like, seriously,
Philadelphia experience.
she's the only medium I've ever heard of reporting things like this. Now she claims that she's a physical medium. In other words, she's not. She's sensing the energy of the place, and that may be rarer or whatever. But the only thing that occurred to me is like, I can't believe that that's the way eternity is.
Yeah, being stuck in a wall for eternity.
Right? No.
mean, it's like being Barnacle Bill in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right, exactly. It's like on the Davy Jones ship
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
It's like
Flying Dutchman.
all those people are just kind of merged into it
Yeah.
and struggling. But I think it's the Navajo Indians, First Nation, Native Americans. Sorry, I don't mean any disrespect, of course, but they have a belief, and I forget the term. There's actually a term for it, but essentially, when a person dies, they would lay their bodies out for 3 days. And when the person initially dies, their spirit, of course, leaves and goes on. But they would wait for 3 days later because that's when all of the negative stuff would leave the body. And I'm wondering if what she's picking up isn't something like that, where it's just...
The negative lingering.
Right, the negative lingering energies of
Right.
people or things going on, and that's what she's sensing, because it's so... Her descriptions are just so... I don't know, they're so depressing. They're so horribly depressing that I couldn't imagine having any level of sanity if you're existing stuck in a wall or
God.
something like that, just in this horrible state of helplessness, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
But I wonder if that's the commonality, is that she's sensing these other parts that were discarded after the initial spirit left the body, and these are the energies that were left over. Maybe they weren't pristine energy or positive energy, so they couldn't merge with the spirit and travel on. But they were they weren't the positive light energy. They were more of the crap that the person accumulated through their lives, and it has maybe a sentience of its own, because it was, of course, part of this person's life, and it was part of that person's energy flow and life cycle. So when they pass, the spirit that is bestowed upon us to give us life is what will return again at the end. But all this other crap that didn't fit into that that light would be left behind, kind of filtered out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't know. It's just a theory.
Well, yeah, but according to people of the Muslim faith, they believe that there is a jinn with everybody on the face of the earth. There's literally a jinn standing right next to me. So, maybe to elaborate on that thought, maybe that's the jinn or the negative emotion or power or energy that's stuck on earth because they can't move on. They don't move on. So, but laying them out for 3 days has been around for a long time. As a matter of fact, that's the reason, you cover mirrors. You used to cover mirrors
Mm-hmm.
in the South. You cover mirrors for the first 3 days while they're laying out in the parlor.
Oh, many
Yeah.
cultures did that.
Well, yeah, but I mean
It's
that's the closest one to us.
yeah.
But even it's called a sky burial. I can't remember where it's from, but they lay you out and let the carrion, birds or whatever, pick at your bones and to help cleanse the body or the spirit out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just different thoughts on that. But
It's hard to know. I mean, that's the thing. It's just all theories. But when I hear those different reports, I try to find some thread of commonality or some way to tie it all together. And
right.
that's the only thing I could come up with. Well, why does she see what she sees? Because I don't necessarily doubt that what she's seeing is legitimate, but it's just hard to believe that that's
It's
what
everywhere.
that's what we could be looking forward to. It's like, oh God, this can't be it. It can't be.
No
I don't
doubt.
want to.
Can you imagine me hanging out of the window? Hey, Brent, this is my negative energy. I left it behind for you, buddy.
Well,
all
yeah,
yours.
don't do that.
Oh, okay.
Don't leave your negative energy here. Take it all with you, but I love you. But
I don't love you that much.
yeah, well, I don't need things hanging out my window. But yeah, strangeness. I don't know, but it was really a funny conversation. Because if you watch the Dead Files, you know exactly what that means, and it's just. Have you ever seen that, Don?
No, I haven't
Oh.
seen that one. No.
And it's a great show, and I think
Apparently
that they
it is.
do.
Everybody's talking about it.
Are they? Yeah. So they know what I'm talking about then in the chat room. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool show, and I don't, like I said, I don't doubt that she's sincere in what she's seeing. It's just I try to understand how is that? How has
Right.
that happened? Because I have to believe that something good is waiting. Not that I want to be wall art for eternity.
Or work in the mailroom for the rest of your free natural life.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Maybe it's just the imprints. Maybe it's the negative leftovers. I don't know. Because I don't know. We could get into philosophy, I guess, forever and never
Be philosophizing.
really come any
to an
closer
answer.
to understanding it. But all we can do is throw out ideas and theories.
See what sticks.
And I don't know if anything sticks.
Well, if it's the walls and Amy's around.
Right. Well, yeah. There's things that'll catch it then. All right. So, do you got anything else?
Sure.
All right.
Let's see here.
See if you can find some better written pieces.
Well, I'm actually kind of going to switch over to a little something different.
Oh.
The Gore orphanage in Lorain County, not far from Lake Erie, in Ohio. My wife, daughter, and I visited the Gore orphanage on October 26, 1999. Our experience is as follows. We went there not to really find anything, just for poops and giggles. Most people commonly believe that there is a bridge, that the bridge and the field on the right. Let me, oh, come on. Zoom in. I need to zoom in. I can't read this. Okay.
Keep going, old man.
Maybe you should wear your glasses, Don. Oh, here we go. Okay, I think I'm at 150% now. All right. Most people commonly believe that the bridge and the field on the right is the site. It is not. If you pass the field, you will come to a wooded area where you'll find a 4-foot tall sandstone pillar that marked the entrance to the orphanage. We parked our car and got out and went about 20 from the road. Went about 20 feet from the road where the pillar stands. You might have to look hard because it's easy to miss. As soon as you step in the woods, you have a feeling of being watched, and sadness envelops you. We went there in the middle of the day, about 4 p.m. approximately. It was cool and crisp, no fog or mists, at least not yet. Immediately upon entering the area, we heard above our heads, in the trees above, a squeaking door and heavy footsteps. This repeated itself 3 times. The door sounded like one of those really heavy oak ones, and the footsteps sounded like heavy steps on hardwood floors. At this point, we went back to our car and got our tape recorder and our cameras. We placed the recorder on the sandstone pillar. Then We then took several pictures. As I took pictures, a mist began to come around. We heard the dull roar of a fire and crackles of flame. I heard a mumbling voice. My wife became extremely uncomfortable and we went back to our car. As we drove off, I asked my wife to stop the car and I unrolled my window. There stood a young boy. He had blonde hair and was about 7 years old. He was wearing ragged old clothes, a red sweater, and dark pants. He sneezed. I asked him his name. He said Jacob. He appeared scared and looking for something. As we left, he stood in the middle of the road and waved by. As we passed the bridge, we taped again. Later that day, we had our pictures developed. In the background, you can see 4 children's faces and a man in the distance in the woods. I wonder if the man is the one that you speak of. He looks very ominous. The ominous man shows up in every shot. Later, after reviewing the recordings, we heard the dull roar through the whole tape. And no, it was not windy. About 4 minutes into the tape, there were about 3 minutes of mumbling, somebody saying, "Help me," and screams from about 6. I would imagine 6 people or children.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear the door open in the beginning, Jacob saying Jacob, and also Jacob sneeze. There is no way that we could have made these noises. We were incomplete due to the awe that we felt. Okay, so there's a word missing there. Complete dismay due to the awe that we felt. While at the site, we did not hear the screams or the voices. We're going to get the pictures enlarged to poster size to get a better view. Later, we found on our car tiny handprints, and the driver's side window where Richard was written from the inside of the car. If you have any other questions about the Gore orphanage, he lives 15 minutes away, and they removed his contact information. So that's the Gore orphanage in some county,
Oh.
Lorain County, not far from Lake Erie, in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
There you go with Ohio. That's
That's yeah.
D Swigers and
Mm-hmm.
grounds there, and she's always talking about how bizarre Ohio is, and I believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
But craziness.
Yeah, no doubt. No
Absolute
doubt.
craziness.
Absolutely.
That's what I've been told.
Okay, so let's see here.
All right.
The gals. Okay.
All right.
All right. So, St. Mary's. You might be wondering when you click on the link that says Seawall Walmart, you're being brought here to St. Mary's page. That's because the Seawall Walmart is where the former St. Mary's Orphanage Asylum used to reside.
Nice.
It's Orphans Asylum.
Oh no.
You can
That's
see
so
the evidence
tragic.
by looking in the seawall of Seawall Boulevard across from the Walmart where this historical marker for St. Mary's Orphanage is. Walmart employees have been reporting misplaced toys, missing pallets of toy inventory, phantom children's laughter, and the cries for parents. This is obviously somebody doing I don't see any names, but I spoke to a former employee who told me a story about how she once heard a child crying and crying for their mother. So she went to find the child thinking they were lost and needed help finding their mother. She searched the toy department. She called out to the child without an answer, and even had other employees and customers trying to assist in finding the lost child. They never did find the child. Never saw a crying child, for that matter. And then suddenly, the crying was said to have just stopped. It sounded like the child was on the next aisle over, and 2 employees argued back and forth saying, "Don't you see her? She's on your side." With the other responding, "No, she's on your side. I can hear her." But they were unable to find the little girl. It's amazing how time erases ghost stories. About 10 years ago, this was one of the most haunted known locations on Galveston Island. Even the local news did a few stories about it. Today, very few people seem to know about this ghost story. Interesting.
Yeah. That's sounds like a great place for a Walmart.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that explains why I try to stay out of them.
Yeah, I do too.
They're all freaking haunted.
They're usually haunted with unhappy people. I'll tell you that.
So,
It's like you gotta
there's a
work to get a
truth.
smile from anybody at
No
Walmart.
doubt. No
I
doubt.
love all people dearly, and I know that maybe they're not the happiest people for some reason, but wow, I don't know. They don't seem real happy when you go into Walmart.
No.
I don't know. Customer service, it's a dying art, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. It is.
Uh, not that that's what this is. Not the purchase portal. It's the paranormal portal. So we'll keep going on. Changing the weather.
Changing the weather.
I got to read that just because it sounds interesting. Excuse me. Changing the weather. This comes from out of New York.
New York.
March 15th, 2017. In 2012, I was working in New York's Times Square doing a promotional event for about a week. Working out there and around so many people, you get to see everything and anything. But one experience stood out and remains the strangest thing I have ever seen. My last day of work on the promotion was the day before Hurricane Sandy. The sky was very overcast and ominous, with the clouds getting thicker and winds picking up by the hour. At one point, a large religious group gathered on the steps of Times Square, where it seemed like thousands strong, and they began praying and singing hymns. This being New York City and Times Square, they went largely ignored. At one point, in the midst of their prayer, rays of sun cut through the clouds, and the temperature climbed at least 20 degrees within a matter of seconds. Reviewing the weather radar for that day, there was a major hurricane system moving in, and there was no possible way for the sun to shine through, even for a brief moment. Needless to say, this kind of gave me goosebumps. From my memory, the sun could not have been out for more than 5 minutes. When the prayer group dispersed and the singing stopped, almost on cue, the sun went away. The temperatures returned to typical for late October. I had been very skeptical of prayer up to that point in my life, being a cynical 20-something who thought he knew better than to waste time believing in such nonsense. In the years since, I have taken up prayer. I am a different religion than this group and became obsessively interested in the supernatural and real-life effects of religious intervention. Yeah, prayers are incredibly strong. Prayers should never be dismissed. And while, there's a lot of things about a lot of different religions that I personally don't resonate to, I just know that the act of prayer is very powerful, and it's an incredibly, it's powerful based upon the heart of the person praying.
Right.
So you are the
conduit.
The conduit and the thermostat for it. I mean, you choose by your faith, by your measure of belief in what you are doing, will determine the effectiveness of a prayer.
Right.
And I've seen some amazing things happen from prayer in my life, and I've seen some very desperate people turn a lot of things around just by the power of their belief. So I've just been really, I'm really always an advocate for people having faith. I don't, like I said, I don't always align to everything people believe in, but I just think having a faith is important. Whatever you believe in, just believe it with all of your heart, and as long as it's good and kind and it's a positive thing.
Right.
So
even if it's a block of cheese, it may be a holy block of cheese. Well, because you say it doesn't matter what the belief is in necessarily.
Right.
It could be
as I've said before, if you held a block of cheese in your hand and you believed that was the most sacred artifact in existence with all of your heart, it would be, because you are channeling that faith into it. And you see how I said the most sacred object instead of holy?
Well, what popped into my head is a grilled cheeses.
A grilled what?
Like grilled cheeses.
Oh,
remember a few years ago, somebody was selling a grilled cheese sandwich that had the face of Jesus on it. It's a grilled cheeses.
Oh my God. Yeah, we're probably going to burn in hell for that one. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, well, I'm probably gonna drown on my jug tonight.
Oh,
I've already spit it out 3 times.
nice. What's going
Like,
on over there?
wow, well, no, you're just batting 1,000 today.
We're gonna have to stall a nipple on your jug there, Don.
That's what Pixie said
Oh,
like
did
3 weeks
really?
ago.
Oh, funny. Great minds. That's all I
Oh,
got to say.
good
Great
gosh.
minds.
Ah,
It is funny, but yeah, it's very interesting. But prayer is very powerful, ladies and gentlemen. I firmly believe it. Firmly believe that we have the ability to do miraculous things because by virtue of existing, we are, in my opinion, we are the product of a divine will. And whatever that means to you is what it means to you. But
well,
and-
I got in an argument with one guy. He was very religious. He's a friend of mine. I mean, he's very religious Christian. And I got in an argument with him one time. He said he was trying to tell me that God was the higher power. I said, okay, what about aliens? Like he just kept arguing. I'm like, what if aliens were designed by God
Mhm.
and put us here as a seeded planet?
Mhm.
Dang it, I can't argue against that, can I? Like, no, not necessarily. You can't.
Well, I mean,
Well, it's just a perception. It's the way we think, the way we perceive.
Mhm.
You know. Um, Glenn, North Nottingham Paranormal.
Mhm.
Somebody asked him what his scariest or most interesting investigation is,
Mhm.
and he wrote in here, it's Thrumpton Manor Knots. I had something encroaching on me in a very large empty room, pitch black. I was terrified. I couldn't even look in my camera to see what it was. I was too scared to look.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. He says, I've never been phased in over 37 years of investigating, but that scared me.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, that's interesting.
I'm just glad it's okay.
Yeah.
You just got to wonder. I certainly, believe that it's possible. I was thinking about this today. There's a lot of people that say, well, ghosts can't hurt you. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. And the reason being is because, I think it has to do with how do I phrase this? Because it's kind of out there as a concept, but when you engage a negative entity, when you engage it, when you search for it, when you're engaging it in a dialogue, you are entering into an agreement with that thing. And it's at that point I think that all bets are off, because once you've entered into that dialogue, once you've asked for it to show itself or make itself known, you are entering into an engagement.
Right.
And at that point, I think you become susceptible to being harmed, to being
Adversely affected.
right, adversely affected, whatever that may mean. Because I think that there's something to do with that in my mind, that once you are out there hunting, if you are ignorant of those things, then yeah, they probably can't hurt you, because you're not in that accord, you're not in that agreement. And I'm not sure who referees this stuff. You know what I mean?
Right,
That
right.
who what happens if they break the rules. But generally it seems that there has to be some kind of an acknowledgement in order for that to happen.
Right.
But I think that certainly researching and ghost hunting or investigating could be somewhat of an agreement, and that's where people get into a lot of trouble. But I think that it's also important for investigators to cleanse, to
Right.
release whatever energies may
Right.
be attached at the end, and that may be a way of breaking that
Right.
and stopping the accord or the agreement or whatever. But
Say goodbye.
yeah, it's not. It's
Cleanse your board. Say
yeah.
goodbye. Close it.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like there's something to that, because I've heard of too many people getting attacked, thrown against walls, getting
Right.
scratched. And it's like, at what point could they cross that threshold and create that damage, create that,
Right.
that interaction?
Right.
What happened that makes it different from let's say, for instance, you're a construction worker. You're working in a place. You notice some weird stuff going on, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Then you've worked in there for months. Nothing's really happened to you other than maybe tools are moving or weird things like that.
Right.
Makes you uncomfortable, but then you go. Then comes in a paranormal group, and people are getting pushed, scratched, poked,
Right.
hair pulled, and it's like, what happened? What was the difference between those interactions?
The level of the belief.
Right, or the level of engagement.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, yeah.
And that's part of it because, of course, to have the engagement, you got to have the belief. So you're right. That's all a part of it.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, this is all just nebulous in my head.
Well, but that goes back to what you were just talking about having faith. If faith is belief, if you believe in the paranormal, you're going to have that connection. Glenn from North Nottingham, he says, I personally think that that spirit is a consciousness, and what we see and hear is projected into our consciousness. He says, for us to experience, that's why we only see fleeting glimpses and hear things that aren't there. Those are the things that are projected into us.
Now that's interesting. And the other thing, Glenn, that I would say to you initially is, how do you can that experience be on a physical plane as well, that the person can perceive the experience? Because there'll be so many instances of multiple people having voice recorders, and only one of them capturing a very loud EVP, whereas it would sound that it was loud enough that it should have been captured on all of them. But does that person then that it occurs for, are they acting as some form of channel? And that it can impress the EVP on their recorder versus all of the others? And let me know what he says.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that because that's an interesting question. And I think it was MCAT. Yeah, MCAT says that's why I don't play with Ouija boards or spirit boxes. You're potentially dealing with something that's invisible and its intentions are unknown. Right. Well, yes, but that goes back to saying, make sure you close your session. Now, Glenn would know this answer because he does a lot of spirit box, works with a bunch of spirit boxes. But I never thought about that. Do you need to close a session with a spirit box?
That's a good point. But I would wager yes, you probably should,
because you're opening a portal with that
it's
box.
a communication.
Yeah.
But I do believe the difference is again that the spirits can manipulate the object directly rather than through the person.
Right.
So there's probably not the level of personal attachment as there is with like a Ouija board, where you're the channel.
Right.
And maybe that's the difference. But I'll be, again, interested to hear what Glenn has to say about those.
Yeah.
Or Zara, if she's in there as well.
Unfortunately, I don't see Zara.
Okay.
That's unfortunate.
All right. But, Glenn, if you can give us your 2 cents on that, we'd sure appreciate it. And perhaps you need to be on the portal yourself, sir.
I'd love to talk with him, and especially because I mentioned Jinn, and he said that he's studied Jinn for a long, long time. So I'd love to talk to him about that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree. That it would be a great discussion, I'm sure. So let me get into another one here. Did I read this one? Oh, no. Okay. This is a new one. This is The Man Who Wasn't There. I work in a modern office building in Midtown, and this is coming from New York as well, for a busy staffing agency where there are people coming in and out all day. But one day there was a man who came in that did not have an appointment on the books. In fact, it seems no one saw him at all. This afternoon, a young Hispanic lady came in for an appointment along with another visitor, a young white male with a black coat on, who I presumed was her boyfriend or spouse. Maybe he looked a little pale, but nothing seemed amiss or out of place about him. Fully normal-looking person. It should be noted that most of the applicants who come in are black or Hispanic, and maybe he looked a little out of place. We work 6 or 7 us in a cramped space around the size of a studio apartment. Since this is Manhattan, space is at a premium. You can't really do anything or make any kind of sound or movement without all of us seeing it. I was busy at the time, but I do not recall seeing this man leave or hearing the door to our suite open. I assumed he had slipped off to the bathroom maybe when I had my back turned, but hours went by and he never returned to our office. Thought this was odd. I forgot about it for a while until the young lady he came in with was done with her appointment, and I asked her out of curiosity where her boyfriend or accomplice went. She looked at me with a confused face. She said she didn't come with anybody. I asked my colleague if anybody else saw the other guy leave, and no one said anything. They all looked at me with a blank stare and continued on with their busy days. Nothing unusual has ever happened before or since in our office. A couple of our employees have died over the years, but he did not resemble either of them. And although our building is modern and has been heavily renovated, we work in the garment district where a lot of companies have come and gone over the years, and maybe it was someone from another time or just someone in the wrong place. Any thoughts or suggestions? Well, that's anybody's guess.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's like, well,
How's your perception today?
yeah, exactly. And there again, like he could be have some latent ability that suddenly poked itself out. Yeah.
Or mental
Right. Yeah.
something.
It could be. I mean, granted that some of it can just be little delusions. There are delusions. There are hallucinations.
Yeah.
Those are real things as well.
Quick shout out to Lucky. Good night, Lucky. Thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate that.
Yeah, Lucky, great. Great to see you. Thank you so much. And sweet dreams.
Sorry.
Always good to give shout outs.
Ken's late. Ken, you're in the doghouse.
You got to go to the Outback. Ba-dum-bum.
There was another one. I almost spit all over my mic tonight.
There you
That
go.
was a good one.
Thank you. I'm here all night. That was a good story, though. I like that.
It was, yeah.
Just, and that's the thing. Paranormal events don't have to be this profound, over-the-top things. They can be subtle things. And perhaps if you look at a story like that and you think, or have we all seen these things and just not realized what they were?
Right.
Now, I've seen many times people that didn't seem to fit in with everything else around them. And it's just one of those things that you see it and you just kind of discard it. But what if? What if those were some of those same things? What if those were, just people that decided to be seen? Because I think that they can choose as well.
Okay.
To be perceived or not to be perceived.
Well, you know what? That feeds into what we were just asking Glenn about the EVP, and because he actually just said this. So he said, yes, sound is projected by the spirit into our minds, our consciousness, and it's the same method for recorders. They project sounds into one recorder in a row of 4. That's why it only comes over on one recorder. Now, what you just said says that, because you were just talking about one person seeing it or perceiving it, and the other's not.
Right. So
So it kind of feeds right into what
Yeah.
was just said.
It's
So
just corroborating it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your feedback on it, because the one thing is for sure in the paranormal that there are no experts. There's just a whole lot of ideas out there, but it's neat. It's awesome when ideas can be corroborated by other people that have the same perception of the event. So thank you very
and
much.
I've heard Glenn say pretty much that exact same thing. There are no experts.
Ah.
Yeah. So
Well, you've heard me say it as well.
I do pay attention, Glenn.
Glenn and I are like brothers from other mothers or something. I don't know. We seem to be joined at the paranormal hip. I've never met Glenn. I don't have any idea what it looks like, but
I've heard his voice several times.
oh, have you?
Not in my head, on the computer.
Oh, is that right? Okay, gotcha. Was that over in the MeWe chat?
Yeah. Well, no, it was. Well, yeah, he's been in MeWe chat too, but
Okay.
he's been on Zara's Paranormal White Noise. a few
Oh,
times, so,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, I got to go watch some more of that. I've only watched a little bit of that, and it's fantastic episodes. So Zara does a great job, and she's been a dear supporter of the
Yep,
portal for a long time.
absolutely.
So if you also would like another flavor of the paranormal, check out Zara's Paranormal White Noise channel on YouTube. Fantastic, and she does a great job.
Yep.
Very cool.
I've been talking to her a lot about spirit boxes, and she keeps going, "Talk to Glenn."
I know. I really got to get one of those. I really do. I've got a friend right now that's making a couple Tesla Spirit radios, so I'm excited about that coming through.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
It will be. It'll be really cool. And if if we try it out and it looks like it's got some cool stuff coming through, we'll be doing an episode of it on the portal here, ladies and gentlemen.
That'll be cool.
Yeah, hang on to your socks because it's going to be wild. Maybe if it does nothing, then it'll just sit on the shelf as decoration. But at the very least, it's cool decoration in the studio. So anyway, let's see what else we got. What else do we got? This is my therapist's office.
God, start off with the issue that you're actually having.
It says, I go to a shrink in Midtown, and this is New York as well.
Wow.
This is 2017, May 31st, 2017. I go to a shrink in Midtown, and every time I'm in her office, I see human shapes in my mind floating up and down when she is talking. They are usually around the size of her head, but sometimes I perceive them to have other facial features that don't resemble hers. Sometimes I think it is because she is very spiritual in tune and maybe has spirits or souls associated with her, but it's hard to tell. I never get this sensation with others I am talking to, and recently she moved offices and I get the same effect. So whatever, it seems to have followed her. Could these be spirits in the building, or are these just entities associated with her and her practice? Is this ghostly and all at all, or is it possible I'm just having a tough time adjusting to the light? These are things that float in and out of view, kind of like pinwheels when you're dehydrated. I don't know what pinwheels when you're dehydrated look like, but do you, Don?
I'm kind of baffled. I mean,
Okay.
I know what the kaleidoscope effect is when you have optical migraines.
Sure.
If that's what they mean.
This person's referring to dehydration, but anyway.
I guess I've never been that dehydrated.
Me either. Yeah, I tend to drink a lot of fluids.
Me too.
Yeah, clearly. All right, so both of the buildings she has worked out of are old brownstones. But I work in an old brownstone too, and I don't see these shapes when talking to people in my office. If I'm a ghost spirit, I wouldn't want to be confined to just being a thing that floats in and out of people's peripheral vision. I never felt any kind of sound or audio visual sensation with seeing these things or associated them in any other kind of noticeable energy shift. Is this a residual haunting, or are there possibly protective spirits associated with my shrink? Is it possible for orbs/energies/full-bodied apparitions to follow people around, and do they ever appear in this form to people? Any kind of help would be appreciated. And quite honestly, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea what this person's seeing. I don't know why they're seeing them. I got no feedback. You got anything on that one, Don?
No, because no, just that's my answer. I mean, you start off with, well, this one time in my psychologist's office, or my shrink's office, I'm kind of gonna discount you a little bit. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Right off the bat, you're just like, well,
the voices in my head
might need to adjust those meds a little.
give me some more.
It is. It's unfortunate.
I don't mean to disparage the fact that people do. There are cases out there of people who have these mental issues. These
Right. We're not disparaging anybody with mental, cognitive problems of any kind,
it just brings into the question the validity of
the story.
the idea of a ghost or an apparition or something like that.
Well, it's easy to discount it as soon as somebody prefaces it with that.
Yeah.
In my therapist's office, automatically you're like, ooh, it's one of those. But then that's not fair. It really isn't.
Well,
but
because
it's a bias that we're going to have.
Well, but think of it this way: maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a grief therapist. Maybe did it say what they were going through? So maybe it's a grief therapist, or some kind of a divorce counselor, therapist.
Well,
whatever.
We could speculate on what kind of therapy they were getting all day long.
True enough. So
yeah.
That's my point, though. Is
right.
Maybe we're going a little hard at it and not knowing the actual what kind of therapy it is. Because sometimes it's just talking. About what's going on in your life, not necessarily what's going on in your head.
Yeah, 90% of the time it's just talking through problems and things like that. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean the person's out of touch with reality. It just means they're in a stressful period and need to talk through it.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's a good point. But you're right. It does also make you automatically at least lean towards disqualifying it. Yeah.
It brings the validity into question.
It seems to. All right, so let's see what else I got. I don't want to do that one. This is interesting. Heard a voice in my head. Heard a coworker's voice in my head.
Oh no.
One of the phenomenon I've heard of is that of projection or a living person's voice or essence being present when the person is not there. I heard something similar to that happen. I had something similar to that happen rather. One of my colleagues at work is an older Indian lady of Guyanese descent. Let's call her Mary. She speaks softly, performs her work very dutifully, and seems to be spiritual in tune as many of her culture are according to stories that I've heard. Being the person in charge of the money, she is very judgmental on all of our performances, especially when there is a lack of money coming in. She is the calm center of a very frenetic and sometimes legitimately crazy office filled with big personalities and outsized egos, as many in the center of New York are. She comes in every day with a zen-like calm and always imparts wisdom in her soft voice. A couple of weeks ago, I was staying in on a Friday after a stressful and disappointing week. Deals had fallen through, medicine had not been functioning as intended, and money was wastefully spent in pursuits outside of work. Naturally, after a week like that, I had a very hard time sleeping. When I was about 3/4 of the way to dozing off, I heard my colleague Mary's voice saying my name, clear as a bell. It was hard to determine if the voice was there in the room with me or just very clearly manifesting in my head. Either way, it was enough to make me sit up in bed. Of course, there was no one actually there, and I got very little sleep after a sensation like that. Has anyone ever had this feeling with a person who is alive and they see every day? Just wondering how something like that can be possible. I don't know. It sounds more just like an auditory hallucination.
Sure.
To me, it doesn't necessarily sound like a phenomenon.
Well, and how many times have you looked up and said, to yourself, I can hear them now, and just having that, you say something and you can hear like your mother. You know what your mother would say,
Oh, sure.
or you know what your best friend would say, or if you're in a situation, you know what your coworker would say because of the personality traits of that person. So who knows?
That's possible. I mean, I can close my eyes right now and hear my mom saying my voice, and I guess saying my name, calling to me.
Sure.
And you're right. I can clearly hear it and down to the absolute tonal perfection. So
Right.
yeah,
because
it's
something we're so keyed into hearing people say things. What we think a thought triggers the memory of somebody saying something to you, or a specific person, what you think they would say, that kind of thing. So I think it may just be a perception issue in this point in this particular instance.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be. Little footsteps in the office.
Oh, Betty Shreve's here. Yay! Hi, Betty.
Hey, Betty. How are you? Thanks for coming in and joining us. And I guess we got about a half hour left.
Sure. Dee just came in late as usual. Hi, Dee.
You'll have to pull up a chair and back, Dee. We've been at it a while. Just find a seat.
Standing room only.
Oh, that'd be nice, but wherever you can find a seat.
That'd be way cool.
We welcome you at the campfire of the portal. All right, this is a little footsteps in the office. This happened on October 26th, the day before yesterday. That was a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, since the students had no class because it was their semester break for college and a vacation for preparing the upcoming All Saints and All Souls Day for elementary and high school students. This is from the Philippines. There were no available canteens or cafe inside the university. In line with this, we employees are considered to buy outside the university for lunch break. Our lunch break is from 12 to 1 p.m., so we had 1 hour to eat and make chit-chats. That's cute. I like how they've written this. I will not tell any more than the rest happened during the lunch break. I'm with my co-employee, and we came back inside the office 5 minutes after 1 p.m. I decided to brush my teeth, so I went straight inside the restroom, and after that, while I was walking to go straight to the workplace, I saw some little footsteps on the floor. Footsteps that is not actually a mud, but an ink from a stamp pad. The ink was scattered on the floor, as if a kid had played in it or something. I followed the footsteps until I reached the workplace of my other co-employee, but it didn't stop there, so I got curious about it, and I go back to my workplace to see some footsteps. I followed it once again until I reached the restroom. I stopped there. But before I saw these footsteps, our working student Grace, not her real name, asked me about the books that are left in the shelves. I was about to get the books, but I saw an ink at the top of my hand, which I do not know where I got that. But I ignored it and wiped it using my right palm, and after Grace left to have her lunch, I saw this footsteps. But I am still not clarified where did I got that ink on top of my hand, because I didn't touch the bottle of the ink, which is kept inside the supply cabinet, and the stamp pad too. I too went to the restroom to remove the ink. So my co-employee are wondering, how did that ink scattered on the floor? We decided to wait for Grace to ask her about it, and when she arrived, we asked her right away, but she said she used the stamp pad in the morning, but not in the workplace. Not in my workplace, but in the area where our working students were staying. We also look under our shoes to see prints and inks, but we didn't saw any ink on the bottom of our shoes. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm literally reading this like it's written, so the language is just this person translating it. So those footsteps are unexplained, which were really very tiny. Maybe a spirit of a child came inside the office and played in the ink stamp of my stamp pad. Because inside of our office there are many spirits, an old man, a boy, a priest, and many more. But this time it's a baby. These footsteps are still marked on the floor. Hope you guys understand my story. Anyway, free for you to ask questions in reading it. Very interesting, but then you got to wonder about things like the proto-pygmies and little people and stuff. Would they be near populated places? Possibly.
Well, where
I don't know.
did they say where they were from?
If the Philippines, it's in
Philippines,
university,
okay.
yeah.
Sure.
And I don't know. I know that Indonesia has quite a few ideas of little people, and I know Hawaii does. So I don't understand why the Philippines wouldn't have something, but I don't know how it would get into a cabinet to get ink pads to put on its feet and walk around. It does
Right.
sound more like a spiritual mischief, but very strange, very unique, I guess.
So we asked Glenn from North Nottingham
Yes.
about closing a spirit box session.
Oh, okay, great.
So he says, even reciting the Lord's Prayer is opening a portal to heavenly spirits. Well, that makes sense. That's why we say it, Amen, at the end to close the portal after asking for God's grace. Same as a spirit box, when we close it down, we ask the spirits to go back. Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so there is a closure.
Yeah, you make sure you close
Practice.
that stupid thing. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn, for that feedback and that information. That certainly helps.
Apparently, Ken's got bats in his belfry.
Oh, I had bats in this house.
I know. We
Yeah.
we took one out that one day.
Right, yeah.
Like, what the heck?
My cat Anubis is amazing at catching bats. It's just awesome. And one time one was flying around, right? And bats are incredibly sneaky little creepy things. And I love bats, don't get me wrong. I
Little
think
devils.
that right, but they do amazing things as far as eating insects and stuff.
Right.
And God knows there's so many of those around. But the bat kind of flew through, and my cat was kind of chasing it. I'm like shooing him away because it was kind of low, and I didn't want the cat to like maul it, because I like to let them out because they do so much good. But I lost it in my wife's sewing room, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know where it is. So I went and got the cat and put him in the room, and he's rubbing up against my ankles, and all of a sudden he just boom, he zeroes
Locks
in on.
on.
Yeah, he just locked on. I heard nothing. I heard not a thing. But you know, your cat's hearing is so much higher than ours. He must have heard the little clickety stuff that the bat's doing, but he zeroed dead on it. And I looked up, and sure enough, it was sitting right up there on a pile of fabric. So I'm like, boom, got the net and got him outside. But yeah, the son of a gun, he got about 8 bats, and I'm not sure if he's not bringing them in to play with, to be honest with you, because I can't find out anywhere in this house where they'd be coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they sure were here. But now, not for a long time. So
Wow.
hopefully, we're done with that fun. I don't know.
So I may have misread this, but I think Ken said something about when they get around him, their sonar goes wacky. Does that mean when they get around Ken, their sonar goes
Yeah,
wacky, or just their sonar's wacky? Sorry, that was just funny.
it is. Well, I hope you get your bats controlled, Ken, and
Yeah.
welcome to the show. And glad you finally made it. We've been waiting.
Interesting.
We couldn't wait for you to start the show, but
Yeah,
I hope you
we
understand.
had to go on with the show.
We had to actually start the show, but we're thrilled that you're here now. All right, let me see what is going on. It wasn't me, it was George. Huh. All right, let's see. It wasn't me, it was George, and this is from New York State. Again, this is this year, February 22nd of this year. I've given a little background on my childhood home and ongoing activity in my first story, and I don't know what story that is, sir, but thank you. But anyway, this is an experience that scared and baffled me for years, and it still does. The house I grew up in was active since day one of my family moving in, and still is. Immediately after moving in, my father started renovating, so I'm sure that kicked up the activity. For some reason, my mother named our resident ghost George. We feel that there is more than one spirit, but anytime something strange happened, George was blamed. And I say more than one spirit because we've heard several different voices over the years, an older male, a childlike voice, and a woman. I know they could all be the same spirit, but it feels like several. This particular experience happened when I was about 13. At the time, we had a toy poodle named Curly. A bit off subject, but I remember Curly was a pain in the butt. The type of dog that, no matter what, refused to potty train or learn basic commands, laugh out loud. Anyway, when Curly was due for a bath, we would do it in the basement where there was a large laundry sink. Being the eldest, my brothers are 6 years and 3 years younger than me, so it was usually my job to bathe Curly. I absolutely hated going in the basement alone. You always felt as if you were being watched and never truly alone. As usual, I tried to get out of it, making up excuses as to why I couldn't give Curly his bath. Finally, my mother threatened to ground me and take away my privileges if I didn't get my butt down there. So I finally grabbed the shampoo, towel, and Curly and headed downstairs to the basement. As I rushed through his bath, I remember hearing my parents chatting and laughing in the living room upstairs. Just as I finished up, I heard my mother start the vacuum. Suddenly, the lights in the basement went out. That's terrible. I was plunged into complete darkness, the kind where you can't see your hand in front of your face. To say I was baffled is putting it mildly. I froze, hoping it was an accident and that they would come right back on. After a few minutes, I started yelling, "Turn the lights back on," over and over. And of course, my parents didn't hear me at first because the vacuum, and I couldn't move. I just kept yelling and crying. Finally, I heard the vacuum turn off and my mother yelling back, "What?" I hollered at her to turn the lights back on. And I heard her walk to the basement door, which is off the kitchen. She flipped the lights on and said, "Well, why did you turn them off?" What? I grabbed Curly and raced up the stairs, blubbering about how mean they were to do that. My parents actually started to laugh and said something along the lines of, "What? You turned the lights off." They thought I had pulled some kind of prank. After I carried on crying and accusing them, they finally realized I didn't do it. The strangest part of all this, they thought I had done it because there were 3 drip marks above the light switch, drip marks that made it appear as if a wet hand had touched the wall right before sliding down to turn the switch off. I was giving the dog a bath, so they assumed it was me, as my hands would be wet. In case you're wondering if it could have been one of my brothers, they were not home at the time, and they were at a family member's house having a sleepover with cousins. I remember when my parents realized that it wasn't me, as their faces became quite serious, and they became quiet. They apologized, and my mother tried to make light of George pulling a prank, but George's pranks were never funny. They still aren't. To this day, my father still tells that story. Geez, I have a lot of stories to tell. Yeah, it sounds like it. That's a horrible, horrible thing, God. It even left wet fingerprints. Ooh, creepy. But that's paranormal, ladies and gentlemen. This is one I wanted to read, and I saw this one mentioned before, but I thought it sounded pretty cool. This is called Phone Message. I think this is, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never heard us mention these, and we run across them every once in a while, but there is a very real phenomenon of
Hmm.
spiritual phone calls, of
Yeah.
people receiving calls from deceased people, deceased relatives, deceased loved ones.
And these are always great
Um,
stories.
yeah, or sometimes really creepy stories of deceased people calling and they're not friendly at all, or it would appear to be anyway. But I don't know. I mean, granted, there's a lot of pranks out there. There's a lot of stupid,
Yeah.
pranky things, but it's there's something to this because there's so many reports of this happening that spirits must be able to manipulate phones to some degree. And I think it's a phenomenal thing. People seeing caller IDs of deceased relatives coming over on their phone when they know the number's been disconnected and things like that. Very, very compelling.
Yeah.
But we'll see what this story is. My father passed away in May 2006 due to complications with diabetes. He had been fighting an infection in one of his feet for several months, and he went to see a lot of doctors in the hopes that they would be able to save his leg. Unfortunately, they were not able to save his leg, and it ended up being amputated. After the surgery to remove his leg, my dad was never the same. He was constantly depressed, in a bad mood, a completely different person. He passed away 7 months later. I and other members of the family experienced several unexplained incidents around the time of his passing, before, during, and after. This is just one of those incidents that I myself experienced when I was alone. Maybe 5 or 6 months after he passed, I was going through some cupboards in the kitchen looking for, I don't remember what, when I found a little blue cell phone that used to belong to my mom. She had purchased a new one about a year before and gave that to my 5-year-old daughter to play around with. I thought it was pretty cute phone and to be stored away without being used, so I started pushing buttons and was able to get it to turn on. And I'm not sure what button I pressed, that I suddenly heard my mom's voice coming from the speaker that said, "Hold on, let me have you speak to him." Next, I heard my dad's voice talking in that happy, carefree voice he used to have, saying, "I'm feeling so much better now, and there's no more pain. I can walk again. Don't worry about me. I'm fine." My heart skipped a beat, and I had tears running down my face. I hugged the phone to my chest as if I was holding him, and just went down on my knees crying. After a few minutes, I got up and went to my bedroom, taking the phone with me. I needed to hear his voice again, so I sat on the bed and started pushing buttons to get the recording back, but the phone was dead. I ran around looking for a charger that would fit that phone, and I was dumping the contents of drawers looking for that cable like a crazy woman. Later, I was able to get the phone charged, and no matter what I did, I was never able to get that recording back. I asked my mom if she remembers ever having or hearing him have that conversation, since I heard it on her on the phone. Since I heard her on the phone too, and she says she doesn't remember and doesn't know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not saying that my dad recorded that message from the grave. I think he could have been talking to a family member when he was alive, and somehow that part got recorded. All I can say for sure is that the message was received exactly when it was needed the most.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That is so cool.
That's one of those. It's one of those great stories, I thought it would be, instead of one of the creepy ones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because cell phones, who knows? Maybe he left a message for someone,
Mm-hmm.
and answering that, oh no, I feel great, I feel the best I've ever been, and blah blah blah. Maybe it just somehow got hung up in the phone as well. But then again, let's talk about spirit boxes. What's the relationship between spirits and spirit boxes? I mean, we are talking about an electronic piece of recording equipment, and,
Right.
and most cell phones, even back in 2008, 2000, 2005, 2006, had some kind of a recording mechanism on it. Well, all phones have, if it's got some kind of a voice recorder or
Oh,
um,
sure.
a message feature.
Mm-hmm.
So it could very well, very well happen. Um, Dory says she thought she had one of those and it scared the crud out of her.
Wow.
She said it was many years ago. The call came in the middle of the night and it was the creepiest voice I'd ever heard.
Ooh, Dory,
Um,
you got to email that to us.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Could you email that to us to Paranormal Portal Radio at gmail.com? That would be awesome.
Yep.
If any of you guys are out here, these are stories are kind of ringing a bell, like, ooh, I had something like that happen. Please, as they occur to you, please drop us an email. I'd love to feature your stories on an upcoming episode where we do listener stories again. Those are fantastic and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Paranormal Portal Radio at gmail.com.
Well played, sir.
Well played.
Well played.
Now if I could just type it.
That's what she said. Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And I know you guys out there have a ton of stories.
Yeah,
Everybody has these stories.
we're
And
begging for them.
you know, the funny thing is that I remember so many stories just doing this show. It's like, ooh, I had something like that happen. Ooh, I had something like that. But you don't remember them. But something will happen and be like, oh, I remember something similar to that happening. So I get it, everybody. I mean, I know it's hard to remember them all. We're not, you know, we don't remember things sequentially, but we are, most of us are associated memories. It's like, oh, I can associate with that because I had something similar. So as they're coming up, I would love if you guys would email them into the show. We can do another listener emails show. That is still, I mean, I've loved doing this, every one of these shows. I really have, but those will always have a special place in my heart because they're the shows you guys created. They're your stories. And that to me is so powerful.
Absolutely.
So please share them. And Don, you remembered the radio on the email. That's awesome.
Yeah, but look right above it. It says message
I know.
deleted.
Message retracted. Don didn't remember the radio on the one before.
No, I did. I spelled it instead of para, it was PS, not PA. So just small little, you know.
Now Betty says, have you ever seen departed people later in crowds at a parade, like at a parade? And no, I haven't personally. Have you done?
No, because I'm not. I don't believe I'm as open or as susceptible, you know. Because I'm going to admit, I've never had a paranormal experience that I can ever remember that I ever thought was paranormal in some way. Remember, because I'm that guy.
Yeah, but you're really not. I mean,
well, no, I'm the guy who's never really.
Yeah.
But okay, you're going to say, but what about everything that happens in the studio? Well, you know, there are some things that I can't logically explain, even to myself. Sure, but there's got to be some reason.
Well, there is. I mean, ghosts.
But it's a paranormal reason, Don.
Yeah, I mean that is a reason. You can't discount that as a possible reason for things. I mean, it may seem very improbable to some people, but it's still. I mean, it has to be a consideration.
Improbable doesn't mean impossible.
Right, exactly. Well, obviously, I don't think it's impossible because I wouldn't be doing the show if I thought it was a bunch of bunk. You know, I love the idea that these things happen, and I love the transitory effect it has on people, in that it changes them.
Sure.
And makes them more willing to look at the world around them more holistically.
Right.
I think that paranormal experiences are incredibly profound, not just hiccups of reality. They are the breadcrumbs to the truth of reality. You know, I really do. I really believe that. So
yeah, I mean, you know, you got to pick up the pieces where you find them, and you got to put it together for your own realizations. So,
and if any of you guys have had an experience like Betty is mentioning in the chat room, of you seeing a person in the crowd or wherever, please email those to us. You know, I love that these discussions are happening. They're incredibly powerful. I wish I could just sit and watch the chat room, because this to me is incredibly interesting. You know, all of it is. All of the discussions and dialogues that we have in the chat room are absolutely powerful. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason I never edit out the commercial breaks on our network shows, is because if I do that, if I can, after the fact, I can edit out the commercials so that it's just a seamless episode. But what we would lose is that whole chat replay, which I think
interplay.
Right. That to me is as important a part of the show as everything else that's going on, because that's you guys participating with it. So I don't want I don't want to delete out those breaks because it may make a more pleasurable viewing experience, but we'd be losing a whole facet of what makes the Paranormal Portal so
Right.
phenomenal,
Right.
and that is you guys interacting and taking part in the conversation. So, some people have criticized that, and that's fine, but I'll never delete them because unless YouTube comes up with a way that'll save that chat replay and just let me edit out those breaks, because I don't want to lose that element. That's definitely a part of the show, and it's part of what's really fun about the show. So that's just kind of a side note for whatever it's worth. But we are actually at 9:00, Don.
We are. We are.
Let me see. I thought I had one more pulled up that I was thinking of reading here. Oh yeah, it was another one of these phone. Okay, that was that one, but there was another one. Wait a minute. Where is it?
My father sent me 3 messages. It's on the right-hand side. Oh, is that it?
No,
Oh, that's a different one.
well, this
Oh,
is
there's another
there's
one.
2 more. I guess I'm going to be reading you 2 more stories for sure, ladies and gentlemen. So, because I really love these phone stories. To me, they're just absolutely compelling as hell. It was 1991, as I recall. This is 2017, December 5th, 2017, from the state of Kentucky. This story comes from. It was 1991, as I recall. An unknown member of the extended family sought to gather the clan by organizing a family reunion. I was contacted by this person, a second cousin, and invited to attend. This was a bit unusual, as our family had scattered across the country long before the invention of the personal computer and the internet. I would like to say that family members were not prone to letter writing and had lost touch, but that would be untrue. Actually, we were and are the fighting Scots-Irish, and familial battles were apparently commonplace, with anger, belligerence, and grudges carried to the grave. Generations came and went, in short, and I attended the reunion, but knew no one. So I traveled from Virginia to Ohio to meet the folks. It was a very brief gathering, but pleasant enough. I met an unknown first cousin, Nona, and her husband, Larry. Names are changed, obviously. We seemed to get on well enough, and we agreed to meet in the future. A pleasant relationship developed and continued over the years, even though I spent significant time abroad. With the passing of time, Larry and Nona's health declined, and it became necessary to spend significant amounts of time caring for them. We came to know each other pretty well under the circumstances, and I shared some of the details of a near-death-like experience I'd had in 1989. Larry listened, but wasn't quite convinced. He didn't think me a liar, but couldn't quite believe the things I described to him. Larry's health dwindled away as the months became years, and numerous hospitalizations made clear to all of us that his condition was non-survivable. Larry, most of all, knew his personal clock was ticking. The clock stopped at 1:37 a.m. on a day in May 2016. Larry passed on in an Ohio hospital with his eldest son at his side, playing his dad's favorite music on an iPod or smartphone. That same morning, I awoke in Kentucky, home, unaware that Larry was gone. The day was routine, except that I found my digital wristwatch had stopped. Later in the day, his son called to tell me that Larry was gone. He was with his father at the moment of death, which was stated 1:37 a.m. A medical doctor later confirmed the time of death, although the official time was a few minutes later. My watch stopped the instant of Larry's death, and I had recently put new batteries in my watch and doubt this was a natural stoppage. Even if my watch failed on its own, what are the chances of it stopping at that particular instant? To be certain of the time of Larry's death, I double-checked to confirm it was a dead-on match. I think Larry stopped my watch. His message to me was, I believe I'm alive. I made it, and I'm okay. The dead, it seems, are not nearly as dead as we tend to believe. Let's take a few minutes and put a bit of frosting on this cake. About the time Larry's health was taking a serious turn, a friend and neighbor, Carlos, was going through the same thing with his older sister, Pearl. Names changed. Her health became worse, and Carlos made a number of trips to help his sister with various things, near death several times. She eventually passed, and Carlos attended the funeral. Shortly after her funeral, His cell phone began to receive messages from Pearl's cell phone. There were at least 3 contacts, and he showed them to me. And there was nothing of substance, just static gibberish or silence. Carlos is a workman sort of fellow, a bright guy, but not a reader. He has no paranormal interest and is not a religious man. He came to me with his phone and was clearly distressed over their sister's apparent contacts from beyond. He was convinced he was being contacted by the dead. Face to face and eye to eye, he told me these very words. Carlos was being contacted from the grave. None of this is dramatic or new news to some who visit here, but I do believe, however, these are good examples of contacts from the recently deceased. I remain convinced that life does not end with physical death. Very cool. And the next one is, my father sent me 3 messages. Okay.
Wow. Dig in.
Yeah, exactly. This is not too horribly long. This story is about 3 incidences which occurred in 2012-2013 after I lost my father. In 2012, I became entitled to study in Spain for a year. I remember that my father was so proud of me. Not long after, my dad had a heart attack in the end of August. I left for Spain with a huge grief in my heart. A couple of months after my arrival, I met a Spanish guy. He was a head-turner, handsome guy, and he seemed like he was doing everything to make me feel a little bit less sad in Spain. I was not sure if I wanted a relationship with him, but he was pushing me. Incident number 1. It was Valentine's Day, and I exchanged gifts with this guy. I came home, and before going to sleep, I kept asking a question. Is this guy good for me? I woke up in the middle of the night, and I saw a black cloud hanging from the ceiling. I screamed so loud my neighbors came to the door to check on me. I managed to sleep again at dawn and had a dream. My father and I were at a grocery shop, and he picked a perfect-looking orange. He showed it to me and asked, "Doesn't it look perfect?" But then he cut the orange open and showed me that it was all rotten inside. He put down the orange and disappeared. Later on, I realized he was warning me about this guy, because he was handsome from the outside and ugly from the inside.
Ew.
But I was going to find this out later.
Yeah, no doubt.
Incident number 2. My father was right. This guy was a mess, and when I wanted to stop talking to him, he reacted harshly and started spreading rumors about me. Once, on the phone, he told me that I was using him to keep myself occupied to forget my father's death. This hurt me so much I cried for like hours and hours that day. Then I started to talk loud as if my father was next to me. I told him to stay with me and that I needed him the most. I prayed for his soul and went to sleep. That night around 4 o'clock, someone was knocking on my door. It was this guy begging me to open the door. His face was swollen and covered with bruises. Apparently, he was beaten to within an inch of his life in a bar fight. I handed him a bag of ice and slammed the door on his face. Then I said aloud, "Thank you, Dad." Incident number 3. It was nearly summer again, and there was only 2 months left to finish my year and go back home. After all, it affected me badly that I couldn't get any support after my dad's funeral, and I dealt with the shock of all by myself. During the last months, I locked myself home and kept studying and kept missing Dad. On one of those days, I had a dream, and in my dream, a song which I never heard before kept replaying. I didn't see anything but heard the song over and over again. When I woke up, I Googled the lyrics and clicked the video of the song, and it was "Never Gonna Be Alone" by Nickelback. In the video, there was a girl who has lost her dad and how her dad kept watching over her. The song still makes me cry. It goes like, "You're never going to be alone from this moment on. If you ever feel like letting go, I won't let you fall. You're never going to be alone. I'll hold you till the hurt is gone." Well, I shed some tears while writing this post. May you rest in peace. To the ones who lost someone so close, they see us. Believe me, they do. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our show for this evening.
Wow. Yeah.
That was a lovely ride back into the portal, and I'm so glad you guys have stuck around and been waiting for us. Thank you for the kind reunion of coming back. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thrilled you guys are here and a part of it. And please remember that on Friday night, of course, we'll be joined by Robin Moonshadow, who'll be on. And she was on before on the portal discussing proto-pygmies and little people. So we'll see what kind of information she's going to bring to the table this time. But I hope you're able to make it. Again, that'll be at 10 p.m. Pacific
10
time
p.m.
on TFR Live, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, or right here on YouTube, where we'll be simulcasting it as well. So I hope you guys are here for that. And then, of course, Don and I will be back on Saturday to continue the mayhem that we do every time the mics are on.
Yeah, it was a good show, and I'm glad it was a good one because they deserved it after our week's hiatus.
Yeah, we did a little extra for you guys.
Yeah.
Just there's another 10-minute extension.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just tough. It's tough for us to be gone as well, ladies and gentlemen. This is, of course, something we love very much doing.
Yep.
And when we're not able to get to the studio and to go on the air, it's definitely it leaves a yearning, a longing, and it's. If it's an addiction, then baby, I'm hooked.
Baby, I got that particular addiction.
Yeah.
I need that fix.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
We got our portal fixed tonight, so
Yeah,
I hope you guys are doing well, and hope you have a great rest of your week. Happy Hump Days Eve. I haven't said it yet, but you are now on the slide to the weekend.
Mike, guess what day it is?
Yeah, exactly. Hump Day.
Yeah, Hump Day.
So you have made it, and we'll be back on Friday night, of course, again. Don, you have anything in closing?
No, I'm just really happy that it was a good show. We didn't have too many issues other than me trying to spit out my drink all over everything.
Yeah, and your microphone was a little spitty at first.
Yeah,
too.
I'll put it in the wash. I'll put the cover in the wash here.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. Just throw it away and get a new one. And thank you everybody for joining us. It was a great show.
Dory says, "I have a portal addiction too."
A portal addiction.
We now have a new malady.
Medical, medical issue.
Yeah.
It's a portal addiction. That's awesome, and thank you very much. Oh, hey, just to let you know, Brent, I think we've been invited to a what is it called?
I don't know.
What is it called when you bring food?
Potluck.
Potluck by the 7 Bewitches.
Really outstanding. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to talk about that and find out what they want to do with that.
Wonderful.
And then just say to all those people like Pixie, sucks not being local, doesn't it?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so that was extended, I guess, from Betty, so we'll have to talk with her.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And that's certainly something I'm sure we'd love to attend. So we'll get the details and see if we can make it all work. But love you all, everybody. Thanks so much again. Be good, be kind, be nice to each other. Help each other out. And if you've got stories, make sure you email them to paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. And we would love to share share your stories with the rest of our listening audience.
Share with us.
Well, the thing is that I think we don't have experts, but we have this ability to share and relate
the
stories.
knowledge.
Right, exactly. So every story that's shared, I learn something new. Well, your experiences teach me a ton of things, ladies and gentlemen. So please keep teaching me.
And I live vicariously through them.
Don's a paranormal voyeur. So, all right. Yeah. All right, buddy. So, all right.
All right, let's close this down. Let's say goodnight.
Let's do that. So,
All right.
Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. Love you. Be good, be kind, be nice. And until Friday, we'll be back for more of this Paranormal Portal.
See you then.
See you then.